something. If you can imagine what it would be like to be a mother sending her child off to war. And acting is all about listening and being open, and if you have empathy, then it's almost enforced compassion. So it's more of a mystery to me how people who are in this business aren't somehow active as citizens of the world, as citizens of their country, because you're identifying with people all the time in other places and what's going on with them. And I don't really differentiate between what I do for a living and my life. I think that being a mother has been one of the most demanding jobs in terms of stamina and imagination and creativity. And I think that my job also helps me listen really well to people and have an open heart. And so all of those things, there's a fluidity between life and, I hate to use the word hard, but whatever my job is. And then, you know, the natural flow of that is to ask questions. And unfortunately, sometimes in the United States, asking questions tends to isolate you, tends to take you away from the tribe, and be labeled political. And as you know, this is a particularly surreal time in the United States in terms of what's going on politically. And I don't know where the journalists have gone to, because we really don't have very many responsible journalists, and television has become so important. And so people aren't getting information to make educated decisions. So if you are someone who's connected to the media in a job like mine, you have the, I think, responsibility and the availability of being kind of a little flashlight to help people get information that they're not getting. And that's often called political, but you know, I think every film either challenges the status quo or reinforces it. And so when you're making films, you're either enforcing sexism, racism, ageism, or you're challenging it. But all films are political films. It's just you only notice the ones that challenge it. So there's a kind of this odd dance that goes on, I think.
Okay, you talk about the questions, and what will be the question? There's one question you ask for yourself as an artist today in America. If you have to choose one question and to see yourself in a mirror as an American artist right now, what would be the question?
That's a really hard question.
No? Living America now.
I think that we're in a time of transition, and we're trying to find out America seems to be craving authenticity. It's drawn on one side to this guy, Trump, because people feel that he's definitely outside of the system and outside of reality and outside of everything. And then there's Bernie Sanders, who also came up without taking money from anyone, without being associated with any of the organizations that are ruining the environment and that are, you know, fracking, Monsanto, all of that. And so people gravitate towards him because they sense that he's a chance to be authentic and to change the status quo into something different. And so, but the problem is that the press, you know, was really drawn to the clown. and not information. And so they've not covered Bernie Sanders very well up until he demanded it recently, or until the people demanded it. But to get back to your question, I think that what's happening now is there's a question of authenticity as opposed to the idea of ourselves that has been developed through reality TV almost. You know, kind of what's happened also online with so many friends and, you know, liking or swiping or, you know, everything that's happened that has given us a false sense of connection, and really what everybody craves is connection. And so I think people are starting to want to actually connect, not just give the idea of connecting, you know, and that's being shown politically. So I don't know what question I ask myself. Where am I?
You're really asking
myself.
Susan, you have been an anti-war activist. You advocate against the death penalty. You recently endorsed the Bernie Sanders campaign, the presidential campaign. Don't you think that those positions and so many others stand for sometimes controversial will affect your career as an actress, or do you think that's completely independent?
But I think that's a little bit like worrying if your slip is showing when you're fleeing a burning building. I don't think you think about those things. You know, you can't start to think about those things because then you're not free to be true to yourself.
And how movie industry and Hollywood in particular can help stimulate political change or strengthen social issues. For instance, knowing the huge challenge the world is preserving, trying to preserve our planet, should Hollywood be more active or play a bigger political role in climate change? For instance, does this try to understand what really is happening right now and what we're facing for the next 50 years? What's the role of Hollywood?
Well, the good news and the bad news is that Hollywood is not political. It never has been political. There are some people in Hollywood who make, for instance, documentaries. There's an amazing amount of documentaries, and people are more interested now in documentaries, and they're becoming better than some movies. When you see the act of killing, for instance, that's an extraordinary film that doesn't even seem like a documentary. So I think that a lot of change can happen through giving information in documentaries, and I think sometimes Dead Man Walking started a real conversation, a dialogue about the death penalty and the specifics of the death penalty, and I think sometimes you can do that, but I think that The Nutty Professor is a very political film, because it makes you want her to be with that fat guy, and it makes you put yourself in the part of that guy that you've never identified with. So I think in terms of climate change, sometimes, you know, it's very difficult to make a film that's about a problem that's environmental, whatever, the death penalty, whatever, and make it a compelling movie. Dead Man Walking was really a love story and a story of redemption, and with the background of the death penalty. And that's what I think pulled you into that. But so it's much harder to write a script and to make a movie that's a good movie and entertaining when it's an issue film. But I think that also a lot of people, I mean, Leonardo DiCaprio just spoke about, you know, choosing a candidate that didn't support fracking when he gave his speech, and I think a lot of these people can bring attention to issues, and I think that's great, because usually the people that don't have a voice need a voice, and you know, the refugees that are pouring in all over the place in Europe, they have no voice, and so anytime that we can tell their stories, and that's what we do, is tell stories, and show their faces. You take people and when you reduce people to a concept and take away their humanity, whenever there's an issue involved, that's a form of violence. So whatever you can tell a story that makes people human again, that's really important, and Hollywood can do that and give you. But I think really the most wonderful stories are ones which are love stories. Every movie I've ever done has been a love story, and ones that encourage people to be the protagonist in their own lives. And if they're the protagonist in their own life, then that will mean that they'll notice the environment when it's being raped, and they'll speak up and they'll
create this magical realism through literature. Could you say that the world of film is a kind of realism with a touch of magic? How do you see this
at its
process?
best? At its best,
process?
I think so. I think that it encourages you to go into a dark space and dream and identify with what's going on, and it can be very magical when you can forget about everything and join in. I think it's at its best. And I personally, for me, the films are best when they're surprising, and when you're in a comedy and suddenly you're crying, and when but there's so many ways for films to go wrong. It's very, it hardly ever works out where they're really, there's a lot of amazing Mexican directors now that are doing this kind of film, this magic realism idea. It's pretty amazing. Well, they made money, so that's going to mean that they can make more films. That's why, not because they have any appreciation, but they've managed to get a lot of awards and make a lot of money, and so they'll be given more money to make more films. So, I think that's hastening it. But really, there's so many inexpensive cameras now. I think that a lot of people, for better or worse, are making a lot of little films. The problem is that there's not distribution. And that's why festivals are so important, because a lot of films can be at festivals and then the crowd really likes them, and then the studio goes, oh, well, maybe we should invest in that. I just saw the Colombian entry for the Academy Awards, I don't know how you say it in Spanish, but the Embrace of the Serpent. That was, wow. So it's possible with all these new cameras and everything to make really amazing films within a reasonable budget, and I think it's giving people a lot of opportunity, and that the festivals are encouraging the production of these kind of endeavors, which is really, really great, because the small film houses that used to exist, for instance, in the United States, that showed a lot of foreign films and little tiny films, don't exist anymore. There are very few of them. They're all these big, corporately owned, small theaters, but within those mega things. And so you're not getting the choices that you used to 25 years ago. So the festivals have filled in, I think, some of the gap for those little films and foreign films and experimental films, and that's so important. So congratulations. I'm here because all my plans failed. So I would say being adaptable and being courageous, especially if you're young. You should fail as big as you possibly can now. It's really important to fail, seriously. And the most successful thing you can do is find something that you really love to do. And forget about making a lot of money, and just find the thing that challenges you and frightens you, and because that's a gift if you can figure that out. And if you're young, you shouldn't be compromising yet. You have to save that for much later. And just fucking go for it. My young filmmaker son is in the audience, Jack. He's a good example. Love you. And I think it really helped me that I wasn't so determined to be an actor. I really just saw it as a means to an end. But I came of age at a time when the issues were really clear. I mean, because you could see on television what was happening in the South and in Vietnam. And you know, it wasn't like now where you're really, everything's filtered unless you're watching Al Jazeera or something. You're not getting what's really going on. And so it was just part of being young, was being involved with what was going on with the Vietnam War and the desegregation of the South and women's lib. I don't think I wore a bra for 10 years. I mean, that was just part of what you were doing, right? Sex, drugs, and rock and roll. It was fabulous. So there wasn't a conscious decision. It was just who I was. It was with the times, what was going on in the times. And, you know, I just was searching. And it just continued, and then I fell into this funny career. And I mean, acting is not that big a deal, really. I mean, just every child does it. You know, it's just surviving. It's difficult. It's not really the acting. So when people talk about their craft, I always get a little bit uncomfortable. But I think that it's trying to create your life. You know, how you spend your energy, how you spend your time, who you spend it with. Those are decisions that are as important. And I've been so lucky to be able to live so many different women's lives and learn so many different things. I've just been so very lucky, really.
So thank you very much for sharing with us all your thoughts, your point of view. Unfortunately, time is out, and
I was afraid you were going to ask some math questions or
no,
something.
not anymore. It's okay.
I'm happy to see that this one actually is a woman. That's the one I have my glasses on. But thank you so much. I'm really happy to be in India for the first time and to be part of India. And I'm going to take a little trip into the jungle so I can see some more of the country. And And thank you. I'll see you some more.